after we left Madison and we went to Pittsburgh, I mean, again, I was one of the only brown kids in a very white neighborhood. And Pittsburgh was much better than Madison, but I think that year of being bullied like shatters your confidence to a point where you just have a hard time assimilating after that. Yeah. So I had a pretty hard middle school and high school experience.
You're listening to the MILF Podcast. This is the show where we talk about motherhood and sexuality with amazing women with fascinating stories to share on the joys of being a MILF. Now here's your host, the MILFiest MILF I know, Jennifer Tracy.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show. This is MILF Podcast, the show where we talk about motherhood, entrepreneurship, sexuality, and everything in between. I'm your host, Jennifer Tracy. Today on the show, we have Paria Hassouri. Paria actually came to me through Tembi Locke, author of From Scratch, whom I just fell so in love with, not only reading her book right before I met her, but then when I met her, I fell in love with her. And then a couple weeks later, we were at an event together and she said, hey, I met this incredible mom, this woman, and I think she'd be great for your show. And I said, great. And so she hooked me up with Paria. I went to Paria's home and I got to learn about her story. And it's just remarkable. Paria is a mother of three. She's a pediatrician here in Los Angeles. 2 years ago, her middle child came out as transgender. That was her own journey, and you'll hear her talk about that in our interview. And now Paria is using her voice to spread awareness and be a trans rights advocate. And she's writing a memoir called Found in Transition about her own evolution during her daughter's transition. She's incredible. She's just so incredible. So I'm just so honored that she made the time in her busy schedule to talk to me and to be on the show. And what an important story. What an important story to tell. So this is the last week in August. I feel like such a broken record because I say this all the time, but I just can't even believe it. So this month's give was and still is Every Mother Counts. Again, you can find a link to them on my page, milfpodcast.com, and donate to them, get involved somehow. They're doing amazing things, helping mothers everywhere get the care that they need for prenatal, birth, and postnatal care that is so lacking in so many countries. Also, this episode is brought to you by Clutch Gifts. Clutch Gifts is a modern personal gift solution designed to enrich your relationships and simplify your life. So it's an online gift boutique that will curate your gift for your person and deliver it to them and make it fabulous. So my two friends, Tracy and Molly, started this company. It's a beautiful company. They have excellent taste. I can't recommend it highly enough. Each clutch is built around sommelier selected small production wines and obsessively curated small treasures that work together to tell a story of celebration, delight, and good taste. Whether an expression of true love, peace, gratitude, or congratulations on a job well done, there's a clutch gift for anyone lucky enough to be on your list. And trust me, if you get one of these and give it to someone, they're going to be blown away. Not only that, but Tracy and Molly have generously offered my listeners 15% discount using the code MILF15 through September 30th, 2019. So I highly recommend getting on there and shopping. It's so fun just even to browse around their site at clutchgifts.com. There'll be a link to that on the show notes page. Also on the bottom of my website, there's all the sponsors that I have, so you'll see them there and you can easily find them on my website. So enjoy that. But for right now, please enjoy my conversation with Paria Hassouri. Hi, Paria.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for doing this.
I'm so honored. I'm honored to be in your home. I'm honored to meet you.
Well, it's great for me to do this. I'm really excited to do it and excited that we're doing this in person and sitting face to face and having a conversation.
Right? Yeah. Isn't that so rare now?
It is really rare. So
yeah, good.
Yeah,
I know. I'm honored. So let's start from the beginning of you. So where were you born?
I was actually born in Baltimore, Maryland, but when I was 3, my family's originally Iranian. And when I was 3, we moved back to Iran. And then we came back when I was 10 years old. And
what was the impetus to move back when you were 3? Jobs?
Actually, my parents had come here temporarily. My father is a neurologist, so he was doing his residence. He had come to the U.S. just to do his residency training. And then when it was over, they went back. And then there was a Iran-Iraq war and all this stuff basically caused them to come back. So when they were originally here, it was just they weren't planning to stay. It was just for my dad to do his residency. And I happened to be born during that time.
Got it.
And
so do you have dual citizenship?
I do have dual citizenship, although the U.S. doesn't recognize dual citizenship with Iran. But
of course, of course.
But so I'm the only one in my family who was born in my parents, between my parents' 3 kids, who was born here. And actually, my U.S. citizenship sort of helped them leave again, to help them be able to get back to the States after the war. So that actually worked out.
Was a godsend,
Yes.
Right. So you moved back again. How old were you when you moved back?
We moved back when I was 10. I lived in Madison, Wisconsin for a year. And that's because when we moved back, my mom had a sister who lived there. And so that was the only place we knew to go. And then my father got a job in Pittsburgh. So I actually grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania for most of my formative years, from 11 to mid to late 20s.
What was that like, Pittsburgh?
That's a whole other thing. So, I mean, Pittsburgh now is probably a lot better than when I lived in Pittsburgh. But
what was it? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah.
What was it like specifically growing up as an Iranian little girl? Am I saying that correctly?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
An Iranian little girl in a family, that was expats from,
Right.
What was that like at that time? I'm guessing in the 80s, 90s.
So the year that we moved back in 1983.
Oh, wow.
So it was actually just shortly after there was a whole Iran hostage crisis. So the 1 year that I lived in Madison, Wisconsin was 5th grade. I moved back 5th grade. I was severely bullied that year. It was pretty terrible. And that actually really has impacted me my whole life. I mean, so after we left Madison and we went to Pittsburgh, I mean, again, I was one of the only brown kids in a very white neighborhood. And Pittsburgh was much better than Madison, but I think that year of being bullied shatters your confidence to a point where you just have a hard time assimilating after that. Yeah. So I had a pretty hard middle school and high school experience.
And it's hard enough.
Yeah.
But add that to it. I mean, and how about your brother? You had a brother and sister?
I have 2 sisters.
2 sisters. Yeah. How did they fare?
I did somehow the worst. My older sister is a couple years older than me, so she was just a little bit more secure as a person, I think, when we got here. And my younger sister was only 2 when we came here, so I think she had an easier time. They both had certain difficulties, but I had the hardest time.
You landed right when kids start to be the shittiest.
Right.
I mean, really, I have a 10-year-old boy.
Right.
And I'm very fortunate that he's in a very small school where the classes are very small and the teachers just do not tolerate any BS.
Yeah.
But I can see these kids. I'm like, God, they're mean to each other the way they. Yeah. So I can imagine. And especially back then where there was just so much less awareness and, at that time politically. And so, wow. So did that kind of make you a little more inverted than you had originally been?
It definitely did. It definitely did for a lot of years. And then I think in college, I sort of really made a conscious decision towards the end of high school that I was going to reinvent myself for college.
Yeah.
And I did that. And I think even though I did that, there's a part of me that's always sort of carried the insecurity of what happened in the past with me. And honestly, that now I'm 46, it really took until after 40 for me to get over all that. In the last couple years, I probably came to terms with it. And I think I finally was forced to put it to rest in the last couple of years. And actually, I mean, I guess we'll get into this, but what forced me to put it to rest was, I'm writing a book about and it sort of weaves my own experience with my middle child, my daughter's experience. And so I think, my middle child, who's now almost 16, but she came out as transgender at 13. And when you have been on the outside and, bullied and experienced being an outsider, the worst thing that can happen is for your child to be someone that you think is going to be the absolute worst outsider currently in the United,
targeted, literally
States,
targeted. Yeah.
And so it took me a while to accept it. And I realized that part of not accepting it was I was so scared for her, and I was parenting her with fear instead of with love. And I finally had to, come to terms with the fact that I was projecting all my own fears about my difficulties onto her and thinking, well, hers is going to be 10 times worse than mine. So I just felt frozen, So as she sort of went through her transition, I finally had to grow up at 45, to land where I am, today.
Absolutely.
So
yeah, I can relate to that. I mean, this is totally different and on a different level, but I have anxiety and depression, and my son he has anxiety and some panic stuff. And there's nothing like raising a child through a difficulty to make you look at your own shit.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
So I can only imagine what that was like for you both, and your whole family. So let's talk a little bit about that. So what was the beginning of that like? Like, let's talk about, so you have 3 children.
I have 3 kids. Yeah. One is just graduated high school. He's going to go to NYU in the fall, which I'm very excited about because
that's huge.
I love New York. So nothing
you get to
better
visit.
than me
Yes.
than getting to go back and forth between LA and New York. So that's great. And then I have my middle one, and she
whom I just met.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or she was the one, she was already up the steps on the balcony. Yeah. I think you met my youngest was at the door. And so she is starting her junior year, and then my youngest is starting 8th grade.
Oh, got it.
So I have 3. They're, I guess, almost 18, almost 16, and almost 13.
Wow.
Yeah. So my middle one, my daughter, she came out when she was 13, but part of sort of why I've started writing a book is that she had actually 0, what I would consider signs of being transgender before she was 13.
Yeah.
So that when she did come out, my husband and I were completely blindsided and shock and in denial. And we thought it was just an attention-getting phase and, all of this. And so later on, and especially for me, I'm also a pediatrician, and there was this part of me that couldn't accept that as a pediatrician and a mother, I would have no clue that what's going on with my child, and that I would be blindsided by something. So I just thought it was trying to get attention or a phase or confusion or something like that, because she didn't have any of the signs usually you would traditionally associate with being transgender, which would be, wanting to do traditionally opposite gender things when you're younger, like 3, 4, 5, 6. But she never wanted to grow out her hair or play with dolls or take a dance class or play with her younger sister's toys, or, any of the things that I would have thought would be signs.
Sure.
And the other thing would be that, a lot of times you'll hear stories about trans kids in the media who are coming out later, and they'll say, well, I kind of knew, but I just didn't tell anybody. So even if there weren't signs, they felt that they knew from beforehand. And she really didn't know until she started puberty. And then as this happened to me, and I started really forcing myself to research and learn, and, I learned that about 50% of trans people don't really present until puberty or later, and that they don't have any signs when they're little kids, or not what we think are typical signs.
Right.
And that really, it isn't until their body starts going through puberty that suddenly this doesn't feel right. And that before puberty, they might be perfectly, fine and happy, and you may not know it.
Right.
And then I started going to a support group for trans families. And the more I started hearing about other stories of kids who didn't have signs when they were younger, the more I was frustrated that these stories weren't out in the media, that most of the stories out in the media are about people who present when they're toddlers or 5 or 6.
Yeah.
And I felt like a big part of my denial and a big part of other parents that I would see that were having a hard time accepting it is because they hadn't seen these other sets of kids and young adults.
Yes.
And they hadn't been exposed to it, and their stories weren't really being told.
Yes.
So that's when I sort of started just telling our story and writing about it a little bit and, then decided to write a book and just to increase the type of different narratives that are out there. Because there isn't one way to be trans. There isn't one way to present as trans. There's so many ways. And so that's
incredible.
Yeah.
That's so inspiring.
Yeah.
So what was it along this journey that sort of, as you were just saying, you were shocked, your husband was shocked, and you guys weren't convinced that it was real. What happened along the way to sort of shift you into realizing, oh, she really means it?
There was probably about 6 months of denial, and then it got to the point where you really couldn't. She was sort of escalating things in terms of just experimenting with her clothing more and going for it. And then she was also, depressed because we weren't accepting it. And so, for every parent who's going through this, there comes a point where you have to really look at your child and think. I mean, there was a point where I had to ask myself, I came to the realization that if I continued to be in denial, one day I would get some horrible phone call that she's done something to herself. And so it was like, am I going to sit around and wait for that phone call, or am I going to take action and do something? But I think one, just the fact that things were progressing and there was no ignoring it. But really what helped me the most was going to a support group for families of trans kids and hearing at a certain point, it didn't matter what my daughter told me. I had to hear what other mothers and parents had to say, and hear other mothers and parents repeatedly say the same story. Yeah, my kid didn't have any signs until they were 15. It came out of the blue. If I rack my brains about their past, there was nothing, there. And repeatedly hearing those stories and seeing that we're not the only ones who have this story.
Yes.
Is really what
Such
ultimately
relief.
Changed things for me and made me say, well, if all these other people who look like involved, intelligent, regular, caring parents were blindsided, it's not just me, and I need to start actually listening to my kid. Yeah. And I really think that there wasn't really that much more she could have told me. I had to hear other mothers.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I think it's that way, just for me, it's been that way from the beginning of motherhood with everything. Like I felt like I was just thrown into a pit with my baby, really, and I didn't know what I was doing. And I would always, that's why I call the podcast Moms I'd Like to Follow, because anytime I had a thing, I would call up a mom I respected and say, I'm clueless. How do I do this? So I think that's so important. And where, for our listeners who may be going through this, where can they find this kind of resource?
Well, fortunately, there's just so much information online. I mean, in the Los Angeles area, transformingfamily.org is the support group for parents of
where you can
trans
go to
families,
meetings.
And they have a monthly meeting.
Yeah.
I'm sure they have it across the U.S. Yeah. I mean, not named Transforming Family, but there has to be support groups and resources across maybe in some of the smaller states, or
they may not have reached there yet. But what we'll do is, I have an amazing show notes writer, Kevin, and he and I can research it and just find, we always add things like that in the show notes. So if you're listening, we'll add the link that Paria just mentioned, and then we'll add some other resources to find, because I think that you bring up such a brilliant point, is that what helped you feel less alone in this and like more at peace with it was finding other families going through the same thing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the National Center for Transgender Equality is a huge resource, and they can probably connect people with support groups across the U.S. Yeah. But I'm sure, hopefully there's a networking, there's a networking system. But
absolutely. Wow. So then you started writing about it.
Yeah.
And you started talking about it.
Yeah.
And your daughter was supportive of that, I'm assuming.
Yeah. My daughter, I had to everything with her, obviously, before it happened. So she knew exactly what I was going to be writing. And, I wrote a couple of articles, told her what I was writing first. Even with my book, I told her, this is going to be the time frame of my book. I'm going to start it on this day and end it on this day. And I'm not going to go past this day, because then the rest is sort of your story, whether you decide to tell, or not. So I really started it on the day she came out and ended it on the day she had her legal name and gender change. So it's just it's like a 17-month period. There's so much I could include from after that, but I just made the decision I was going to stop it when she had her legal name and gender change, so that the rest she can decide one day if she wants to tell or not. But that it was really more about my journey during her transition and how I went from complete denial and grief and devastation to not just accepting it, but really thriving with what's happened.
Yeah. And I mean, as evident in everything that I've seen and that you've shared with me before the podcast, like really celebrating this.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's so powerful what you can do if you just decide to open your mind and change your mindset about how you use these. And I think, the biggest thing for me is, just fear about what is her future going to be. And I've just had to stop living in fear, I just had to.
Yeah.
I mean, I still have some fear and worry. I used to worry that, maybe she would end up alone or not find someone. And that I don't worry about at all anymore. She has so many friends, and, young people are so amazing these days. And she actually, since she came out, she has so many more friends, and I have zero worry about that. Yeah. I still have some worries about her safety. I'm a little more cautious with those things, like she'll take the public bus to go places, and I don't let her take it after dark. I don't put her in a lift alone. I take a little extra precautions with her that I didn't with my older one. But so I still have a little bit of the safety fear, but I'm not in any way worried that she will ever be lonely or not find, she has friends, and I'm not worried about her finding a partner one day or any of that. Like, that is not even the tiniest bit of a concern.
And you probably know a lot more about these stats, but I would imagine that Los Angeles is probably one of the best places to be as far as a community, a trans community.
Yeah, LA is great. Obviously, San Francisco is great. Portland and Seattle are actually on this.
I can imagine.
Side really great. I think Seattle has a huge community. Yeah.
I mean, so great that you guys are here and really central. And
I think, hopefully for me growing up, I grew up in Pittsburgh. I consciously made the decision that I would move out to Los Angeles one day.
You did? You always knew?
Well, yeah. So I had an aunt who lived here, and I used to visit her. And every time I would visit LA, I would feel so comfortable because it was like a melting pot, and there was so much diversity.
Yeah.
And so
you weren't the only woman of color or child of color.
Right.
Yeah.
So I moved to LA. I made a conscious decision that I'm going to move to LA and have children in LA, and that's where I'm going to live. Hopefully there's a day where it's like, we don't have to be limited. I don't want her to say, well, I mean, when it comes time to it's college is only a few years away. So when it's time for college, we are going to only be looking at cities where I know she's going to find a support, a network,
and luckily
and a support
there's
group, and be
so many colleges in all of those places.
Yeah. So, but hopefully there's just like there's a day
Boston,
where people who live wherever they live
exactly don't have to think
about those things, or that you can just live anywhere in the U.S. and blend in and have a good support network.
I don't think we're that far. I mean, 2020 election, please God, let it be positive. But I don't think we're that far. I do think our kids could see that.
Right.
I really do think that.
I do too.
And I mean, I know I live in a bubble. I've been living in West Hollywood for 20 years. My kid has grown up knowing how to name everything. There's no what's gay, what's trans. Like, he's known that since he could speak. And, so I feel very fortunate in that regard, because we're white as white gets. And if we were somewhere else, he wouldn't see anyone else that looked any different than he does. So, I can only imagine, but that's just so remarkable. And I can't wait for your book.
Oh, thanks.
It's so amazing. It's not easy writing a book.
No, it's
but
not.
You're doing it. Yeah, that's so great. Did you always know you wanted to be a pediatrician?
I think with a lot of immigrants, you get sort of pushed towards a professional track. So my father was a physician. I was good in math and science. And so I I sort of assumed that I would just become a doctor because there was I felt a certain amount of expectation to become one.
Yeah.
It's interesting because now I think about a lot, I think when you're like a woman in your 40s, you're reevaluating your whole life.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
So I think a lot about at what point did I make active decisions in my life, and did I actively choose to become a doctor? And I don't really think that I did. I do think that I actively chose to become a pediatrician. Like once I went through medical school and started doing my rotations, I always loved kids. I mean, I grew up, all I wanted to be was a mother. And which would really frustrate my own mom because she wanted, all she wanted was like all her kids to be professionals, because she had dropped out of grad school once she got pregnant with me, so of course you want for your kids what you didn't complete. But once I got to medical school and started doing my rotations, and I mean, I already loved kids, and I knew I was either going to be a pediatrician or not be a doctor.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I think, when I love kids, and I really love talking to other parents. I mean, I think being a pediatrician is just a lot of like hand holding and reassurance.
Yes.
To parents of, you're doing great,
absolutely.
Whatever you're doing.
I love our pediatrician also, Dr. Kramer.
Oh, yeah.
You know her?
Yeah.
And I just thank goodness for all the times I would just call and be like, especially when he was a newborn, I just felt so inept.
Yeah.
And she would just reassure me, and he's fine. He's getting enough milk or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But it's a really important role.
Yeah.
So how long have you been practicing?
17 years.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of crazy that it flies by.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it really does.
So a long time.
So your oldest is 19, 18?
Almost 18. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I had him during my last year of residency.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay, wow.
So,
yeah, you were young. You started young.
Yeah. I was 28 when I had him.
Which is young now by today's standards.
Yeah. At that time, we were living in Cleveland, and it was, I was not necessarily a young mama at that time. It's crazy. But now I see 28-year-old moms once in a while. Like rarely do I see a mom in her 20s anymore. And when I do, I'm like, oh my gosh, this person's a baby having a baby.
I know. Isn't that funny? And what do you attribute that to as a physician or just as a person? Because you see it day in and day out. What do you attribute that age? Because it's gotten later and later.
Well, I think it takes longer to just, figure out who you are, go to school. I mean, just getting through school, putting yourself through school, then, figuring things out. And then I think also just people are pursuing their passions and interests more before having children right away, which is great.
Yes. Yes.
I think you either do that first and then you have a kid, or you don't and you have kids and then you're suddenly in your 40s and you're like, wait, where am I in this? And you do it, and you try to figure it out later.
Because you can't really do it right after you have the kid.
No, you can't. No, you can't.
You are in that thing, whether you're a stay-at-home mom, which I hate that phrase. I wish we'd come up with a new phrase. Because there is no stay-at-home. There's no staying at home.
No.
Not like home is like bonbons and furry slippers or something.
Right.
And how did this experience shift your perspective as a pediatrician?
Really shifts your perspective on everything.
Yeah, of course.
But I think even as a pediatrician, we certainly don't train pediatricians on about gender and the spectrum that gender lies
Do you think
on.
that's going to change now?
Just in the last, so it's kind of funny. I have an op-ed coming out in the LA Times on Wednesday, I think, about this that I just wrote.
Okay, I can't wait. I'm going to repost
Just September of 2018 was the first time the American Academy of Pediatrics released a statement on how to approach transgender kids and to treat them in a gender-affirming approach. September of 2018, the first AAP policy statement.
Wow.
Hopefully now, in the last couple of years, maybe we're starting to provide a little bit of that training. But
they have a long way to go.
That's a long way to go. And I'm sure we're probably maybe doing it better in certain cities, than other places. But there's a long way to go. There's a lot to learn.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm constantly still trying to read and learn. One, I just sort of look at children differently and how much we impose gender roles on them without even realizing it.
Yeah.
And then, you just look at just families differently, how whatever it is that a family's going through, navigating difficult decisions and walking through difficult decisions. I mean, I think certainly it's going to, affect me in that way. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
like once your child's a teenager, for example, most pediatricians will speak to the child alone, and so they'll spend a little alone time with the teenager just when they go for their routine checkup. And that's usually when we're asking them, like, who are you, attracted to, and, are they being safe, and what are they doing, and things like that. I mean, really adding in like a simple question, like, do you feel comfortable in your body? You don't, just things that we weren't taught to ask and don't ask, and so it's made me aware of a lot of those
and just
things,
you're making me think about all the ways that, I mean, I think I'm a pretty conscious person, but obviously I have implicit bias. And well, two examples. One is kind of a silly example. We were buying shoes the other day and he found these high tops and they were pink. And he goes, I want these ones. I said, okay, great. And the shoe lady looked at me and I looked at her and I was like, yeah, it's great. It's fine. Like she was looking at me for an okay. And I thought it was so interesting. And then he tried them on, they fit. And he was like, I love these. I was like, cool, we'll take those and these other ones. And then he was running around the store and she said, I just have to tell you that I think it's really cool that you let him buy those shoes. I said, what do you mean? She said, most parents will not allow their child to buy a color shoe that does not identify with their gender. And it was something that is seemingly small, but like to be told, no, you can't wear that color, or, you can't put your hair this way, or, by your parent. I mean, that's huge.
And so much worse for boys. We don't let boys express themselves in any way. I mean, little boys are the sweetest things ever. And somewhere between being a little boy and being an adult, we just shut everything down in them.
You got to be macho. You got to be.
I mean, it's like, I don't know how we do it, but we do it. I mean, not to generalize, but little boys are often so much sweeter than little girls. And somewhere something changes and they pick up the message, like, that they can't.
I'm not allowed to be soft
they
anyway.
They can't be soft. Or
they
can't express themselves. I mean, girls, at least if they, want to be whatever a tomboy, is, and, just not wear dresses and cut their hair and wear shorts and t-shirts. I mean, we sort of encourage it.
That's
they're
socially
much
acceptable.
more, they're allowed to
again.
express themselves a lot more, but boys are not allowed to express themselves at all. And it's really sad.
Yeah. And it's everywhere. I mean, it really is. Even in the most kind of socially aware climates. I mean, my son was at a elementary school before he was at Westmark, which is I was just about to tell you, it's a specialized school for learning difference kids. And because he was diagnosed with dyslexia in second grade and really struggling. And then we found this school and it was just such a godsend. But we were at this little school called the Oaks in Hollywood. And they're pretty progressive and very socially aware of social consciousness. And, even in that, you just realize how much implicit bias we all have and how much stuff we put on, myself included, but it's just so nice to start seeing some more awareness around these things and support where it's like, no, just life's hard enough. Just wear what you want, do your hair how you want, do whatever activity makes you feel good. Like, now, how did your family deal with this?
My other two kids didn't miss a beat. I mean, kids are amazing. So they were just like, okay. My older one, my son, he was just like, okay, well, I kind of already knew, I had sort of figured it out, because from the time she came out till maybe 9 months before we really told them, she came out to us first and, all this stuff. But my younger one, she actually first got excited because she was like, oh, I'm going to have a sister. And then she realized she was going to lose her brother. And you kind of saw this wave of emotions go through her for a day or two. And then it was all fine. Yeah. My parents, I was petrified to tell my parents, and they were surprisingly like, okay. Like,
Oh.
I
Are
mean,
they still in Pittsburgh?
They retired and moved to Calabasas a few years ago.
Great. So they're close by.
So they're close by, but
that's nice.
I had been
I
delaying
bet.
telling them.
Because I would make the assumption, again, I'm making the assumption, that they're probably a bit more traditional.
I mean, my parents are actually both pretty liberal, but it's still just culturally not something you're very exposed to. I mean, they're just older. I mean, they're in their
different time.
70, my dad is in his 70s and my mom is almost 70, kind of thing. But I mean, as soon as I told my mom, she was like, well, okay, so that's fine. We're going to figure this out, and I mean, I think, and they were just very support. And my dad, like within 2 days had researched everything. I mean, I was still in denial and he had sort of researched, everything and was trying to, figure things out. And,
he's a scientist. He's a man of science. Yeah.
So, my mom, she thought that, maybe it would be easier if she waited till like college to come out because she was just worried, that it's difficult to come out in high school. I was so surprised by how, I mean, we're so lucky. I have to say, I can't even imagine what it would be like. Cause I mean, all my I didn't have a single friend that I didn't have anybody I was worried about telling. Like that was never the issue. The issue was I'm worried about my child. The issue was never I'm worried about my community, my friends, my coworkers. The only person I did worry about was my mom. And apparently I didn't need to, I didn't need to worry about her. So we were really lucky. I mean, cause I see other families that their friends aren't supportive or their family members aren't supportive, or you have two parents who together, one is in agreement and one is not. And then you're trying to, go and get medical treatment and both parents have to be on board when they have, and then you're getting courts involved. And I mean, there's, so much that can happen in this kind of scenario. And we were fortunate in many ways, one being that we just had supportive friends and family from the very beginning. And also fortunate in that, a lot of the costs associated with transition are still not covered by insurance. And it's not a financial hardship for us, which I realize how incredibly lucky we are. It's not altering our lifestyle significantly. I mean, that is huge. I mean, for so many people, they can't afford care. Certain things are covered, but it's not easy. And it's not easy to get coverage for a lot of things. So we've been as lucky as we can be, in terms of the stress has just been the coming, the going through, it is still a grief and acceptance and a loss process. And then, just that worry that are they going to be, okay? Because no parent wants their child to have any sort of hardship whatsoever. That's your whole, you want your kid to have the best.
Well, and you bring, like, I think about, this came to my attention through this other workshop I was doing. There was a woman in the South and her adult child had just come out, and like deep South. And we didn't really get to uncover it because of time, but I just got the feeling that, this was like the deep South, heavily Christian, and very difficult to deal with that, and not a lot of support, and not a lot of funds as well. So I think to your point, like, it would be great to, if we can have a time where there's, more support available everywhere and also just more education everywhere. So I do think we'll get there, but like I said, I think it'll probably be in our in our grandchildren's lifetime,
which we're not in any rush for.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or maybe sooner. Let me correct myself. Maybe sooner.
Yeah. I think it'll take a little time.
I think so too. Wow. So where can we find, I know you have some stuff out there. Do you have like a website where we can find you?
I have a website, pariahassouri.com, just my name, which is easy. So that has, it has a link to any articles I've written, or if I do a podcast, like this will go on there.
Yes. Your social media links.
Yeah, my social media, my Instagram and Twitter. I'm pretty active on Instagram, like a 12-year-old girl. There's a part of me that's still a 12-year-old girl on Instagram, and I make no apologies for it. So paria.hassouri.com has links to my Instagram, which is LA Paria, and my Twitter and all my articles. And people can also sign up to subscribe for a newsletter, which rarely goes out, like a few times a year. But if I publish something, I'll say, okay, like I published this, or this is what's happening with my book, and things like that.
Perfect.
So, yeah.
I'd love to include your, is it LA Times or New York Times that's coming out tomorrow?
LA Times is coming out Wednesday, probably.
Yeah, maybe I can include that in my newsletter this month, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
And just, because I think that's so amazing. And just to get the word out and more education.
Yeah.
So, okay, cool. So we know where to find you. Yeah. And where are you in the book process?
My book is tentatively, the title is Found in Transition. And I have an agent, and she's certainly, so nonfiction, all this is new to me, but
sure.
For a memoir or nonfiction, you write a nonfiction book proposal. So my proposal is currently at 10 different publishing houses. So
I'm doing a little publishing dance. Publishing dance.
So that's sort of the phase I'm in. Like just maybe a week and a half ago, we sent it out to the first round of people. And there's been good interest, it seems, so far. So that's good news there. But the first draft is completely written. So hopefully once all that settles, maybe it'll go fastish. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
Because I did write the entire first draft before I made a nonfiction book proposal.
Yeah.
So that's really exciting. And it sort of, has like the A story is Ava's transition, but the B story is really my evolution and bringing back my past and how my past sort of colored this whole thing.
Yeah.
And really how I had to grow up through the entire process. Yeah.
Wow. You're a remarkable person. I'm so honored to know you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I love what you're doing. I mean, I think,
thank you.
I'm jealous that you get to just sit down and talk with other
it's so awesome.
Moms, because there's so many moms doing so many amazing things.
Awesome moms.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I was reading an article in the New York Times a couple months ago, and Gwyneth Paltrow was being interviewed, and she said, ask a working mother to do it. And I, again, like back to the stay-at-home mom, like I don't like that term. I feel like all mothers are working mothers.
Absolutely.
I really,
every
really
single
do.
One. Yes.
There's no working or non-working. It doesn't matter whether you go to a traditional job or whether you're home with your toddlers. You are a working mother.
Absolutely.
So she said, ask a working mother to do it, which to me, the translation is ask a mother to do it. And that shit will get done. She said, I'm quoting her. And I'm like, you know what? Damn straight.
Right. Yeah.
It's so true. Yeah. So we've come to the time when I'm going to ask you 3 questions that I ask every guest. And then I'm going to ask you a lightning round of fun questions. What do you think about when you hear the word MILF?
I mean, I have sort of this love-hate with MILF. A
lot of people do.
Yeah, because I do think of it as more of a mother I'd like to follow, which to me is really a mother who's investing time in herself and that's what I find attractive, is a mother who's investing time in herself and figuring herself out. But at the same time, I don't want any mother to feel like there shouldn't also be this pressure to be this amazing person that's going to impress other people that people want to follow, So it's so I have like so many conflicting feelings about it. But in general, I think of it as a mother who hasn't lost herself. And maybe that's because I had a period when I lost myself and I had to find myself. So I think of, any mother who hasn't really lost herself and is pushing herself and figuring it out is what I admire.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. What's something you've changed your mind about recently?
A lot of things, but I would say just recently about death row, maybe, because recently I read this book, Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson, which I don't know if you've heard about.
No, I haven't.
It's basically about this lawyer who goes to Alabama and starts defending all these people on death row who are there for absolutely no reason. It's sort of like When They See Us, the Netflix documentary. It's the same kind of thing where you just realize how much corruption is in the system.
It's horrible. It's horrible.
So right now I would say death row.
How do you define success?
I think I define success as trying, even if there's a very hard, even if there's a big chance you might fail.
Yeah. Okay. Lightning round of questions. Okay. Ocean or desert?
Ocean.
Favorite junk food?
French fries.
Oh my God, mine too.
Yeah.
As long as they're not soggy, they got to be crispy. But I just went away this weekend for my son's birthday. Yeah. I think I had it was 3 nights. I think I had 10 different orders of French fries.
Yes. I'll never say no to fries.
Me neither.
Yeah.
Movies or Broadway show?
Movies.
Daytime sex or nighttime sex? She's wincing.
Daytime.
She's wincing.
Daytime.
Texting or talking?
Neither.
Silence.
No, I'm just like, let's meet in person.
Yes.
Like send me a quick text so we can set a date to meet in person, but not a back and forth text conversation and not a phone call either.
Yeah. I've become the same way. Yeah. Like I really just, I've learned I'm very, what's it called? Analog. Mm-hmm. Like I just can't, I need that in-person thing. Cat person or dog person?
Cats.
Have you ever worn a unitard?
Maybe in like ballet 5th or 6th grade or something?
Yes.
6th grade.
Shower or bathtub?
Shower. I hate a bath, actually.
I had a guest who said, ugh, shower. She said, I don't want to sit in my own filth.
No. I just can't relax. I can't relax. I start thinking about all the things I'd like to do. I can't.
Yeah. Ice cream or chocolate?
That's hard, but I'm going to go with ice cream.
And it is, as we're recording, it's like 95 degrees outside. Maybe not that hot, but it's pretty hot. On a scale of 1 to 10, how good are you at ping pong?
1, if that.
What's your biggest pet peeve?
Tardiness.
Oh, I'm glad I was just on time. In fact, I was like 1 minute late and I was like, oh, I'm 1 minute late because I parked at 2:44 after you gave me explicit instructions. I was like, oh, and I'd unloaded and then I got in my car, drove up the block and then, I'm glad. Okay. Ooh. I'm always on time too. I'm usually early. If you could push a button and it would make everyone in the world 7% happier, but it would also place a worldwide ban on all hairstyling products, would you push it?
Yes. I hate hair products anyway. So yes.
Superpower choice: invisibility, ability to fly, or super strength?
Super strength.
Would you rather have a third eye or 6 fingers on each hand?
Oh my gosh. That's really hard. I'll go with the fingers.
Right? Because you could use those in your work. Like hold an extra pen here or there.
I mean, it's just, I feel like a third eye on a face would be so distracting.
True.
But,
that's true.
Yeah.
But 6 fingers would be distracting for a minute. And then it would be,
Yeah.
What was the name of your first pet?
Snoopy.
Oh, yeah. What kind of pet
was a black and white rabbit.
Oh, that's so cute. What was the name of the street you grew up on?
I don't remember the first street, but I guess the first one I remember was Ridgefield in Pittsburgh. Yeah.
So your pole dancer name or your porn name or whatever you want to call it is Snoopy Ridgefield.
I mean, that could be intriguing, right?
I think she's kind of a baller.
Yeah.
I can see her just like throwing down some sick moves. Yeah.
Yes.
She may do some hip hop up there on the stage.
Yeah.
Paria, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
What a treasure. Thank you.
Fun.
Thanks so much for listening, guys. I really hope you enjoyed my conversation with Paria. Join me next week for a fresh episode of MILF Podcast. And in the meantime, don't forget to head over to Clutch Gifts and use your exclusive MILF discount, 15% off with the code MILF15. Until then, I love you. Keep going.